History feels dramatic because we remember the explosions, the crashes, the revolutions, and the disasters. But the most powerful forces shaping your life are rarely loud. They are quiet, they are slow, and they repeat themselves endlessly while everyone else is distracted by noise. Every generation believes the world has never been more uncertain than it is today. Every generation believes their problems are unique, and every generation is wrong in the same way. Because while technology changes, while politics change, while markets change, human behavior stays the same. And that is where the real advantage lies. The core idea of same as ever is simple but uncomfortable. The most important truths about life, money, risk, and success never change, even when the world looks completely different. Morgan Housel shows that progress does not eliminate human flaws. It only disguises them. Fear, greed, overconfidence, envy, impatience, and hope behave today exactly as they did decades ago and centuries ago. If you want to make better decisions, build long-term wealth, and avoid repeating the same mistakes everyone else keeps making, you must stop obsessing over what is new and start understanding what is permanent. This book is not about predicting the future. It is about recognizing patterns that never leave, and the first chapter begins with a powerful reminder of how fragile everything really is. Chapter 1. Hanging by a thread. Every success story feels solid when you look at it from a distance. Great empires appear strong, long careers appear stable, wealth appears permanent. But zoom in closely, and you discover an uncomfortable truth. Most outcomes you admire were never guaranteed. They survived by inches, not miles. History did not move forward because everything was planned perfectly. It moved forward because fragile systems somehow did not break when they easily could have. Morgan Housel begins by exposing how thin the line is between success and collapse. Most of the things we call inevitable were actually hanging by a thread. Small decisions, random timing, and sheer luck played a larger role than anyone wants to admit. Companies that dominate industries today survived moments where one wrong move would have erased them completely. Countries that look stable now were once one bad decision away from chaos. Even personal success stories often ignore how many times failure almost happened. The dangerous mistake people make is assuming that because something survived, it must be strong. Survival does not mean invincibility. It often means fragility that got lucky. This misunderstanding leads to overconfidence. People stretch systems too far because they believe the past proves durability, but the past only proves survival, not safety. When you forget how close failure once was, you stop protecting yourself against it. If everything meaningful is more fragile than it looks, then the biggest dangers are not the ones you can see. The real risks are hidden, silent, and invisible until they are too late. And that leads directly to the next truth most people ignore. Risk is never what you expect. Chapter 2. Risk is what you don't see. When people talk about risk, they usually point to obvious dangers: market crashes, wars, recessions, competition. But the most damaging risks are never announced in advance. They do not make noise. They hide in plain sight while everyone is watching something else. The greatest failures rarely come from threats people feared. They come from blind spots people never imagined. Morgan Housel explains that risk is not what you prepare for. Risk is what you overlook. By definition, the biggest dangers are invisible because if they were obvious, people would already be protecting themselves. Every major collapse in history shared the same pattern. Confidence was high, models looked convincing, past data felt reliable. And then something unexpected arrived, something no spreadsheet or expert predicted. The problem is not ignorance. The problem is overconfidence in what is known. People mistake detailed knowledge for complete knowledge. They assume that because they understand many variables, they understand all of them. But reality is always larger than our models. The world does not break where you expect it to. It breaks where you are not looking. Understanding risk means accepting humility. It means preparing for uncertainty instead of pretending it can be eliminated. If unseen risk shapes outcomes more than visible danger, then another quiet force becomes even more powerful: the gap between what we expect and what actually happens. That gap changes how people behave, panic, and make decisions. Chapter 3: Expectations and Reality. Happiness, disappointment, panic, and confidence are rarely driven by reality itself. They are driven by how reality compares to expectations. Two people can experience the same outcome and react in completely opposite ways. The difference is never the event, it is the story they expected beforehand. Morgan Housel shows that expectations act like emotional leverage. When expectations are low, even average outcomes feel like success. When expectations are high, even good outcomes feel like failure. This is why markets crash during good news and rally during bad news. It is not about what happened, it is about whether reality beat or disappointed expectations. The same applies to life. People who expect smooth progress are emotionally destroyed by setbacks. People who expect difficulty are resilient when it arrives. The danger is not optimism, the danger is unrealistic optimism. When expectations drift too far from reality, disappointment becomes inevitable. Managing expectations is not pessimism, it is psychological armor. If expectations shape emotions and decisions so powerfully, what happens when human psychology itself becomes unstable, overstimulated, and unpredictable? That question leads into the chaos of the human mind. Chapter 4: Wild minds. Humans like to believe they are rational. They trust logic, data, and planning. But under pressure, excitement, fear, or hope, the human mind behaves more like a wild animal than a calculating machine, and markets, societies, and relationships all reflect that reality. Morgan Housel explains that extreme outcomes are rarely driven by facts alone. They are driven by emotions amplified by groups. Fear spreads faster than logic. Confidence turns into arrogance. Hope becomes delusion. When enough people feel the same emotion at the same time, behavior becomes irrational on a massive scale. Bubbles form, panics erupt, mistakes multiply. The dangerous part is that these moments feel convincing while they are happening. People do not feel foolish when emotions take over. They feel certain. Wild minds do not respond to evidence. They respond to stories, social proof, and momentum. Understanding this does not make you immune, but it helps you recognize when logic has left the room. If emotions distort thinking, then numbers themselves can become dangerous weapons when misunderstood. And that brings us to a chapter about statistics, scale, and why big numbers deceive even smart people. Chapter 5: Wild numbers. Numbers feel safe, they feel precise, they feel objective. When numbers get large, people trust them even more. But the moment numbers grow beyond everyday experience, they stop clarifying reality and start distorting it. Big numbers do not make things clearer, they make them harder to understand. Morgan Housel explains that humans evolved to understand small, tangible quantities. We understand 1, 10, and 100, but millions, billions, and trillions lose emotional meaning. When numbers grow too large, they stop feeling real. This creates dangerous misunderstandings. A 1% risk sounds harmless until it is applied to millions of people. A small probability feels irrelevant until it repeats enough times to guarantee disaster. Wild numbers also distort success stories. Extreme outcomes often depend on scale, not brilliance. A tiny advantage repeated millions of times creates massive results. At the same time, a tiny mistake repeated endlessly becomes catastrophic. People misunderstand risk, reward, and probability because they fail to respect scale. The math is correct, but intuition is broken. If numbers alone cannot explain reality, then something else fills the gap. Humans need meaning. They need explanation. And when facts feel confusing, stories step in. Chapter 6. Best story wins. Facts rarely change minds. Data rarely inspires action. But stories shape belief, behavior, and memory more than truth ever could. The best story almost always defeats the most accurate explanation. Morgan Housel shows that humans do not experience the world as raw data. They experience it as narrative. Stories compress complexity into meaning. They create heroes, villains, causes, and consequences. This is powerful but dangerous. The most compelling story is not always the most accurate one. People choose explanations that feel satisfying, not explanations that are correct. In markets, the winning investment is often the one with the best story, not the best fundamentals. In life, people justify outcomes with narratives that hide luck and exaggerate skill. Stories simplify reality, but they also erase uncertainty. They make chaos feel intentional. That comfort comes at a cost. If stories oversimplify reality, then the next problem emerges when logic itself fails to explain outcomes that feel unfair, random, or impossible, and that leads to moments where nothing seems to add up. Chapter 7 does not compute. Some events break our mental models completely. They do not feel unlucky. They feel impossible. They do not fit logic, effort, or fairness. And when reality does not compute, people search desperately for explanations. Morgan Housel explains that the world often produces outcomes that defy proportionality. Tiny actions lead to massive results. Huge efforts lead to nothing. This feels wrong because humans expect balance between input and output, but reality does not promise fairness. It rewards leverage, timing, and compounding, not effort alone. When outcomes do not compute, people assume corruption, conspiracy, or incompetence. Sometimes they are correct. Often they are not. Sometimes the system simply works in nonlinear ways that humans struggle to accept. Understanding this prevents bitterness. It teaches patience. It explains why persistence matters even when progress is invisible. If outcomes feel unfair and unpredictable, then emotional stability becomes a rare advantage, and calm, surprisingly, is often the birthplace of the most dangerous behavior. Chapter 8. Calm plants the seeds of crazy. Chaos feels dangerous, so people prepare for it. Panic looks obvious, so it triggers caution, but calm is deceptive. Long periods of stability convince people that danger has disappeared, when in reality it is quietly growing beneath the surface. The most reckless behavior often begins during the safest times. Morgan Housel explains that calm environments change behavior in subtle but powerful ways. When nothing bad happens for a long time, people stop imagining that it ever could. Safety becomes assumed. Caution feels unnecessary. Risk starts to feel like an opportunity instead of a threat. This is how leverage builds, standards slip, and fragile systems stretch beyond their limits. People do not become reckless because they are foolish. They become reckless because calm teaches them the wrong lesson. The absence of pain rewrites memory. It convinces people that past disasters were exaggerated or outdated. Stability breeds confidence. Confidence breeds excess. Excess eventually invites collapse. Calm does not eliminate danger, it disguises it. If calm creates overconfidence, then speed multiplies the damage. When everything happens faster than humans can adapt, mistakes stop being small, and that brings us to excess. Chapter 9. Too much, too soon. Too fast growth feels like progress. Speed feels like efficiency. Abundance feels like success. But when change happens faster than people can emotionally absorb, it stops being empowering and starts becoming destructive. Not everything improves when accelerated. Morgan Housel shows that many failures come not from lack but from overload. Wealth arrives too quickly. Fame grows too fast. Technology advances faster than culture. When humans are pushed beyond their psychological capacity, judgment collapses. Sudden success creates pressure, envy, fear, and unrealistic expectations. Systems that grow too fast skip the learning that comes from gradual progress. Mistakes that would have been corrected early instead compound silently. Moderate growth allows adaptation. Explosive growth overwhelms it. Humans are built for gradual change, not instant transformation. Progress without pacing creates fragility. If speed amplifies mistakes, then patience becomes a hidden advantage. The most powerful outcomes rarely happen during excitement. They happen quietly, slowly, and often when no one is watching. Chapter 10. When the magic happens, people expect breakthroughs to arrive during moments of action. They imagine success appearing during effort, struggle, or intensity. But the most powerful moments often arrive later, long after the work feels finished. The magic hides in waiting. Morgan Housel explains that compounding works invisibly. Progress is not linear. Results pile up slowly, then suddenly feel dramatic. This creates the illusion of overnight success, when in reality patience did the heavy lifting. Most people quit too early because progress feels disappointing before it feels rewarding. They abandon strategies during the boring phase, right before compounding takes over. Time is the most underestimated force in success. It rewards endurance more than intelligence. It favors those who remain consistent while others search for excitement. The magic happens not when you act, but when you wait long enough for your actions to mature. If patience produces miracles, then tragedy and success begin to look less sudden than they appear. Some disasters explode overnight. Some victories take decades to reveal themselves. Chapter 11. Overnight tragedies and long-term miracles. Some events shock the world overnight. A market collapses. A company disappears. A reputation is destroyed in days. These moments feel sudden, violent, and unpredictable, but they rarely begin suddenly. At the same time, the greatest successes feel slow, boring, and invisible while they are happening. Morgan Housel explains that tragedy and success operate on opposite timelines. Disasters feel instant because their causes accumulate quietly for years. Weakness builds unnoticed. Small compromises pile up. Risks compound silently. When collapse finally arrives, it looks sudden, but it is only the moment the damage becomes visible. Success works in reverse. Growth is gradual. Progress feels insignificant. Effort appears unrewarded for a long time. The miracle only becomes obvious after. Patience has already done its work. This misunderstanding shapes behavior. People underestimate low danger and overestimate fast reward. They chase excitement while ignoring fragility. They abandon steady progress because it feels unimpressive. Reality rewards those who respect time. It punishes those who mistake silence for safety and boredom for failure. If time hides both danger and opportunity, then the smallest forces begin to matter more than anyone expects. Tiny actions, tiny habits, and tiny decisions quietly shape enormous outcomes.
Chapter 12. Tiny and magnificent people search for big ideas because they feel powerful. They chase massive breakthroughs because they look impressive. But the most transformative forces in life are rarely loud or dramatic. They are tiny, repeated, and almost invisible. Morgan Housel explains that compounding does not care about size. It cares about consistency. Small actions, when repeated over long periods, produce outcomes that feel miraculous in hindsight. This is why habits matter more than goals. A tiny edge maintained for decades outperforms a massive effort applied briefly. At the same time, small mistakes repeated endlessly become catastrophic. People dismiss tiny decisions because they feel insignificant, but significance emerges through repetition, not intensity. The difference between success and failure often comes down to patience with the boring. Great outcomes are rarely built. They are grown. If small forces shape big outcomes, then collective behavior magnifies their impact even further. And that is where emotion and politics collide. Chapter 13, Election and Despair. Every election feels existential. Every political moment feels like the end of stability or the beginning of disaster. Emotions run high, fear dominates, hope collapses or explodes overnight. But history tells a calmer story. Morgan Housel explains that people consistently overestimate the short-term impact of political events and underestimate long-term forces like culture, incentives, and technology. Elections change headlines quickly, but deep systems move slowly. Fear thrives because political narratives are emotional by design. They magnify extremes and ignore continuity. This leads people to make rushed decisions based on anxiety rather than evidence. While politics feel urgent, most personal outcomes are shaped by habits, skills, relationships, and long-term behavior, not election cycles. The danger is allowing emotional noise to hijack rational planning. If fear distorts perception during moments of pressure, then perfection becomes another trap. The pursuit of flawlessness often creates more damage than imperfection ever could. Chapter 14. Casualties of perfection. Perfection feels responsible. It feels disciplined. It feels safe, but perfection often hides fear, not excellence. And fear has a habit of paralyzing progress. Morgan Housel explains that perfection kills momentum. People delay action because they want certainty. They wait for ideal conditions that never arrive. Systems become fragile because they leave no room for error. Progress depends on tolerance for imperfection. Growth requires mistakes. Resilience comes from adaptation, not flawlessness. The most successful people and systems accept messiness. They move forward while adjusting along the way. Those who demand perfection often achieve nothing at all. If perfection blocks progress, then hardship becomes unavoidable, because real progress was never meant to be comfortable. Chapter 15. It's supposed to be hard. People quietly believe that if something is meant for them, it should feel natural. Smooth, effortless. They assume struggle is a sign they are doing something wrong, but that belief destroys more dreams than failure ever could. Difficulty is not a warning sign, it is confirmation. Morgan Housel explains that progress was never designed to feel comfortable. Growth stretches identity. Success demands patience under uncertainty. Improvement requires repeated discomfort without immediate reward. When people encounter resistance, they often interpret it as misalignment. They think the path is wrong because it feels heavy. But difficulty is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that you are pushing against limits that actually matter. Everything valuable comes with friction. Relationships demand compromise. Careers demand sacrifice. Investing demands patience. Health demands discipline. None of these feel easy when they matter most. The problem is not hardship. The problem is expecting ease. When expectations align with reality, hardship becomes tolerable. When expectations are unrealistic, hardship feels unfair. Those who endure understand a quiet truth. Hard does not mean broken. If hardship is unavoidable, then quitting becomes the real danger. And the only way forward is to keep moving, even when progress feels invisible. Chapter 16. Keep running. Most people do not fail because they choose the wrong path. They fail because they stop too early. They quit during the slow, silent stretch where nothing seems to be working. Momentum does not die loudly. It fades quietly. When persistence ends, Morgan Housel shows that endurance is the most underestimated advantage in life. Talent opens doors, but consistency keeps them open. Intelligence helps at the beginning, but resilience decides the ending. The world rewards those who remain in the game longer than others. Staying power allows luck to find you. It allows learning to accumulate. It allows mistakes to turn into wisdom instead of regret. Many people abandon strategies right before they begin to work. They mistake boredom for failure. They mistake slow progress for lack of potential. Those who keep running do not always move faster. They simply refuse to stop. If endurance compounds results, then the future belongs not to the smartest or fastest, but to those who believe. Tomorrow still matters, and that belief shapes how people think about what comes next. Chapter 17. The Wonders of the Future. The future often feels terrifying. Headlines predict collapse. Technology feels overwhelming. Change feels uncontrollable. Fear dominates imagination far more than hope. But history tells a different story. Morgan Housel explains that humans systematically underestimate long-term progress, while overreacting to short-term chaos. The future looks dangerous because uncertainty is emotionally louder than improvement. Most meaningful progress arrives quietly. Medical advances, technological tools, living standards, knowledge access. These improvements rarely feel dramatic in the moment, but they reshape life over decades. Pessimism feels intelligent because it sounds cautious. Optimism feels naive because it requires patience. But rational optimism recognizes that progress is uneven, slow, and real. Believing in the future does not mean ignoring risk. It means acknowledging that adaptation has always been humanity's greatest strength. If progress continues despite fear, then the real challenge becomes surviving the journey, because the road ahead is harder than it looks and not as glamorous as it seems. Chapter 18. Harder than it looks and not as fun as it seems from the outside. Success looks exciting. It looks glamorous. It looks rewarding. People imagine freedom, admiration, and ease. But the view from the inside tells a different story. Most things worth pursuing are harder than they appear and far less fun than imagined. Morgan Housel explains that society romanticizes outcomes while hiding the process. We celebrate results but ignore the sacrifices required to achieve them. The public sees success as a destination, not as a daily commitment filled with boredom, pressure, and responsibility. Behind every admired outcome is repetition that feels dull, decisions that feel lonely, and discipline that feels exhausting. The excitement people expect rarely arrives. What replaces it is routine, accountability, and constant problem solving. This mismatch between expectation and reality causes disappointment. People chase success expecting happiness, only to find stress. They pursue ambition expecting freedom, only to find obligation. The problem is not that success is undesirable. The problem is misunderstanding its cost. Those who thrive are not surprised by the difficulty. They accept it before they begin. If success demands sacrifices most people are unwilling to make, then motivation alone cannot sustain effort. Something deeper must drive behavior. Chapter 19. Incentives, the most powerful force in the world. People say values shape behavior. They say morals guide decisions. They say intentions matter most. But history proves something far more powerful controls outcomes. People respond to incentives, whether they admit it or not. Morgan Housel explains that incentives quietly shape behavior more than intelligence, ethics, or logic. Change the incentive and behavior changes instantly. Ignore incentives and even well-designed systems collapse. Many failures occur not because people are dishonest or incompetent, but because incentives reward the wrong behavior. Short-term rewards encourage short-term thinking. Punishments encourage hiding mistakes instead of fixing them. Understanding incentives removes confusion. It explains why people act against their stated values. It explains why good intentions produce bad outcomes. It explains why systems fail repeatedly in predictable ways. If you want to understand behavior, follow what is rewarded, not what is promised. If incentives explain behavior, then wisdom comes from learning how to align actions with long-term goals, and that realization changes how everything finally makes sense. Chapter 20. Now you get it. There is a moment when confusion dissolves, when patterns become clear, when the chaos of life suddenly feels connected instead of random. That moment is not loud, it is quiet. Morgan Housel explains that wisdom is not about learning new facts. It is about seeing old truths differently. Once patterns reveal themselves, decisions become simpler, not easier, but clearer. You stop chasing novelty, you stop fearing volatility, you stop expecting fairness, you stop confusing noise with importance. Understanding human behavior changes everything. You recognize fragility, you respect time, you manage expectations, you accept imperfection, you plan for risk you cannot see. This clarity does not eliminate mistakes, but it reduces regret. It allows you to navigate uncertainty with humility instead of fear. If understanding brings clarity, then the final challenge is maintaining perspective over time, because how long you wait often matters more than what you do. Chapter 21. Time horizons. Two people can make the same decision and experience completely different outcomes. One feels regret, the other feels peace. The difference is not intelligence, effort, or luck. The difference is time. Morgan Housel explains that time horizon quietly shapes almost every decision people make. Short time horizons create anxiety, impatience, and overreaction. Long time horizons create resilience, clarity, and confidence. When people judge outcomes too quickly, they mistake temporary pain for permanent failure. They abandon good strategies. Because results have not arrived yet, they panic during volatility because they expect certainty too soon. Long time horizons absorb shock. They allow mistakes to fade. They give compounding room to work. Most success stories look dramatic only because the timeline is ignored. The world feels harsher when you expect immediate results. It feels calmer when you give time permission to do its work. If time rewards patience, then the next danger appears when effort turns into obsession, because trying harder is not always the solution. Chapter 22. Trying too hard. Effort is praised. Hustle is celebrated. Persistence is admired. But beyond a certain point, trying harder stops improving outcomes and starts destroying them. More effort does not always mean better results. Morgan Housel explains that excessive effort often signals fear, not discipline. When people force outcomes, they lose flexibility. They cling too tightly to plans that need adaptation. They refuse to step back when stepping back would help. Trying too hard narrows perspective. It increases stress. It reduces creativity. It blinds people to alternatives. In investing, in relationships, in careers, desperation often causes the worst mistakes. Wisdom is knowing when to push and when to allow space. Progress requires effort, but it also requires restraint. Some things improve only when pressure is reduced. Balance, not intensity, sustains long-term success, if restraint protects progress. Then the final truth becomes unavoidable. Some experiences leave marks that never fully disappear. Chapter 23. Wounds heal, scars last, pain fades, memories soften, life moves forward, but not everything returns to its original state. Some experiences change people permanently, even after healing appears complete. Scars tell stories pain cannot forget. Morgan Housel explains that survival does not mean restoration. People recover from crises, failures, losses, and fear, but they rarely return unchanged. Experiences leave imprints that shape future decisions, even unconsciously. This is why past trauma influences risk tolerance, why previous losses create caution, why success sometimes creates humility. Scars are not weaknesses. They are information. The mistake is pretending scars do not exist. The wisdom is learning from them without being controlled by them. Those who acknowledge scars make better decisions because they respect fragility. Life does not erase history. It builds on it. If everything you have experienced shapes who you become, then the ultimate lesson of this book becomes clear. The world changes constantly, but human behavior remains the same, and understanding that truth is the greatest advantage you can ever have. Final thoughts. Life is messy, markets fluctuate, people behave unpredictably, luck can vanish in a heartbeat. But the patterns that matter remain constant. Understanding human behavior, risk, patience, and time gives you a vantage point that no headline, strategy, or expert can replace. Morgan Housel's Same as Ever is not just a book about finance, investing, or economics. It is a guide to navigating life itself. The principles of patience, humility, and long-term thinking apply to wealth, careers, relationships, and personal growth. What makes this book extraordinary is the clarity it brings. Success is not about brilliance, speed, or control. It is about endurance, understanding the invisible forces around you, and respecting what you cannot change. Risk, time, incentives, and human psychology shape outcomes far more than talent or intelligence ever will. The greatest advantage you can cultivate is perspective. Perspective allows you to stay calm when chaos erupts. Perspective allows you to endure when outcomes are invisible. Perspective allows you to see opportunity where others see only danger. Every chapter reminds you that while life is uncertain, your response does not have to be. By aligning your behavior with timeless truths, you can navigate complexity with confidence and purpose. The truths in this book are simple, but simple does not mean easy. Acting on them requires patience, reflection, and discipline. You now hold the roadmap to think clearly, invest wisely, and live deliberately. But knowledge alone is powerless. Action transforms understanding into results. If you are ready to master your decisions, protect your future, and harness the power of timeless principles, start today, apply one lesson immediately, share your insights, rewatch this video, reflect, and then take the next step toward building your life with clarity, resilience, and purpose. Do not wait for luck or perfect conditions. The time to start is now. Hit subscribe for more cinematic, storytelling-driven book summaries that give you actionable wisdom you can apply today. Comment below which chapter impacted you the most and how you plan to use it in your life.